Hey, geography students, it is Thursday, October 14th, and I'm finished with classes, so I'm going to try to do a quick combined lesson for you. I've got at least 2 of you out, maybe more. I should have had this ready to go, and I don't. Okay. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Okay, so great trip in Dallas. Really enjoyed all of you guys. You behaved well and seemed to really enjoy the trip. So thank you for that. I have put together a travel journal. Let's see if I can find one with. There it is. Looks like this, and I will hold on to yours and get it to you when you're back, but I feel like I was supposed to give it to somebody. Oh yeah, I remember. I was a junior. Anyway, I did it for the juniors too, but this is, it looks like this, and there are several different places that you can, I want you to make your reflections, and so I will save that for you. It is a project grade or a test grade, so probably what I'm going to do is, 90% of the project grade is simply the trip to Dallas. And so since y'all did such a great job, and I anticipate that you will complete your brochure very well upon your return, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're going to get 50 out of 50. And I am going to put that into RenWeb. Grades are due tomorrow, or Friday, yeah, tomorrow. It's the end of the quarter. And so I want to make sure I get that grade in for you. So I will do that. And then we spent some time on Tuesday talking about the Dallas trip, what we would do differently, where we would spend more time. I think everybody, oops, hold on. I think everybody felt like they would have liked more time pretty much everywhere, especially the mall. And because Dallas is so far away and we're on a pretty tight timetable, we talked about maybe looking at doing it for 3 days next year. I'm not sure if that will happen or not, but anyway, we talked about it. So, but anyway, after we talked about Dallas, kind of got caught up on that, we did some review of where we've been and where we're going. And let me see here. I'm going to send a PowerPoint to you, but I'm going to combine Tuesday's lesson and Thursday's lesson. So there's some, I'm probably going to have to take off some of the pictures because Google Classroom will not allow me to upload files that are too big. And so sometimes when there's lots of pictures associated with the lesson, it will not let me upload it. So I'm probably gonna have to take some of the pictures off. But we spent some time going back through Yemen and Oman, the United Arab Emirates. We talked about Yemen is the poorest country on the peninsula. They're engaged in a civil war right now. Oman is the hottest country in the world. And then UAE, of course, in comparison to that, is a beautiful, thriving place, and Abu Dhabi is the capital. So I'm going to leave that slide on there. Then we looked at pictures again that we'd already actually looked at. We talked about what an emirate is. An emirate is a territory that's controlled by a Muslim monarch called an emir. We looked at some of the resorts and high-rise buildings and beautiful downtown of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which we've done before. And again, this area is the Middle East. Excuse me, also known as the Persian Gulf. Most of these countries surround the Persian Gulf. And then on Tuesday, we dived into 3 more countries called Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar or Qatar, depending on who you talk to. And we looked at some pictures of them. We watched a couple of videos that I have included on your Google Classroom assignment. And let me zip down here. Just very quickly, and you can look at the notes on this as well, but Qatar or Qatar is going to host the 2022 Men's World Cup Soccer Championships or Games. And I told the class that Qatar is a little tiny country in the Persian Gulf, And when they won the bid to hold the World Cup games there, a lot of people were suspicious because they're a tiny, tiny country. I don't think there's ever been a World Cup soccer tournament played in that part of the world, and they can't accommodate the crowds. They don't even have an airport big enough for some of the airplanes that would be coming in. So they've had to spend probably billions of dollars preparing their country for the World Cup soccer games. So I think they had one stadium and they have to build 3 more. They had to rebuild several runways that could accommodate large aircraft at their airport. And it kind of came to light, my recollection is that it came to light that there probably was some bribery and underhanded dealing that landed them the prize, but nonetheless, it's still going to be there in 2022. Qatar is very hot, and so they are having the games at night, I believe, towards the evening, and I think that's what I read, and that the stadiums can be covered. Just like AT&T, they can pull the cover over if they need to. Rain obviously won't be a problem. But anyway, there is a short video that talks about the World Cup soccer happening. So when you see that picture of the soccer players in Qatar, watch that video. Bahrain is a little tiny island country. There's actually a bridge that connects Bahrain with Saudi Arabia. Bahrain was at one time a wealthy oil country as well, but they've kind of dried out their oil. And so they've just diversified. They do tourism and banking and some other things. And actually a lot of Westerners that work in Saudi Arabia live in Bahrain and take the bridge over to the peninsula because their wives are not restricted by what they can wear, what they can do, like they would be in Saudi Arabia. There's some pictures, lovely pictures there. You'll see some artificial islands that have been created because space is a problem there, so they build these artificial islands. Of course, a Muslim country. And then I don't know if you remember Garrett Sons and Macy Sons. Coach Sons was a coach here for 3 or 4 years. When Garrett was in my class in 9th grade, his grandparents were living in Bahrain. His dad worked in Saudi Arabia, and so they had moved to Bahrain so that his grandmother could have a little bit more freedom. And so there's a picture there of us FaceTiming them, or I guess we Skyped them. And so we were talking to them while they were sitting in their high-rise apartment complex, looking out over that beautiful city while we were in class. That was kind of fun. And then Kuwait. Kuwait is that little triangle country at the tip of Iraq. The Euphrates and Tigris rivers don't flow through Kuwait. They flow to the right of the country and dump into the Persian Gulf, but Kuwait is another very, very wealthy country. They have oil, all kinds of oil, art, I think banking as well. And in 1990-1991, Saddam Hussein, who was the dictator of Iraq north of Kuwait, decided to invade Kuwait because he wanted their oil. And so he marched several thousand of his soldiers across the border. And the Western world was a little freaked out because at the time we purchased a lot of our oil from Kuwait and that region. And so the instability was concerning. And so President Bush Sr. gave Saddam Hussein a warning and said, if you don't withdraw your troops within, I think it was like 30 days, then we and our allies are going to begin a bombing campaign, and then we're going to come in and forcibly remove them. And so Saddam Hussein didn't do anything, and so the bombs started to get dropped, and in a strange turn of events, the Iraqi soldiers came out of their foxholes with their hands in the air, and they begged to be able to surrender and walk across the border, which is what they ended up doing. So it was, as far as wars go, it worked out well. There's 2 or 3 pictures of our soldiers. It was called Operation Desert Storm, sometimes referred to as the First Iraq War. And unfortunately, as they were leaving the country, they set a lot of the oil wells on fire. So you have this gas or oil, and you have sometimes natural gas, and so they would light them like lighting a wick that goes into a glass of oil. It's going to burn for a long time. So as they left and lit these things on fire and some of the refineries on fire, Kuwait was a mess for a year, maybe even 2 years. fires burned uncontrollably. They finally did get it under control, however, and there's some pictures here that show that. And then, trying to think here. We watched a Drew Binsky travel video when he went to Yemen, I believe. So he's the guy, he's kind of a redheaded guy who has traveled to over 200 countries, and he makes little tiny videos. And so way back before he started making the more professional videos, he would do Snapchat videos. And I found he actually did a Snapchat video on Bahrain a long time ago. And so I showed that to the kids. So I'm going to show that, I'm going to give you the link on YouTube to watch that as well. Let me go back up to this slide. So as far as your notes go, there's a slide that has 3 bullet points that have to do with Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar. They are all located on the Persian Gulf. They are all small, oil wealthy countries, and Bahrain has introduced banking. And then the third point is that Kuwait was the focus of the Iraq War of 1990 when Iraq invaded Kuwait for its oil. So Kuwait City is the capital of Kuwait, and I'm going to go ahead and include that picture here. I feel like just looking at it, it looks like Kuwait City, the capital, looks like it's built on an artificial island. When you have a chance to look at that, see what you conclude as well. Okay, and then the lesson from today. So the kids took a notebook quiz. Now, I'm assuming you don't have your notebook with you. So what I might do is, rather than making it a quiz, I may send it to you and have you complete it as a worksheet, and you can use your book, or you can use Google, whatever you want to use to complete it, rather than worrying about whether or not you've got your notebook at home and taking a quiz. So they took a notebook quiz over everything we've covered so far in the Persian Gulf, Middle East regions. And then today we started class after that talking about a new fact of the day, which is Sharia law. So if you want to, while you're at home, whether you have your notebook or not, if you just pretend like you're in class, and why don't you write down 5 facts over today's fact of the day, and I will include the pictures in the PowerPoint as well. So today's fact of the day, actually, you know what I'll do? I will upload a Word doc that has the fact of the day and then 5 blanks, and you can just type it on there and submit it. And then I'll print a copy and give it to you so you have it for your files. But anyway, today's fact of the day is Sharia law. I think I left the sheet over there, so I'm going to go from memory. So Sharia law is the moral code and criminal and civil religious law of Islam. We've already talked about it a little bit. Sharia law governs the country of Saudi Arabia. When someone commits a crime, they go before, I think it's a panel of 3 judges. They listen to the case, and then they take the Quran out, and they open the Quran to determine what the person's, if they find them guilty, to determine what their punishment should be. There's not very many countries that practice pure Sharia law, but, excuse me, Saudi Arabia is one of them. Afghanistan is also going to follow an extreme version of Sharia law as well, which is unfortunate for the women that live there. On the slide that says fact of the day, Sharia law, a definition for Sharia law is written on that slide, and if you want to use that as one of the facts, you can. There are a handful of pictures of people getting flogged, some members of the Taliban slapping a woman's legs because her legs are showing, and then a couple of pictures of European Muslim communities that are advocating for Sharia law within their communities. As far as I know, no community in the United States or in Great Britain in particular no court systems have agreed to allow them to use Sharia law as the law that governs them, because oftentimes Sharia law contradicts Western laws. Like, for instance, it is permissible for a Muslim person to kill another Muslim person who has converted to another religion like Christianity. It's forgivable, is what they say. Obviously, you can't do that in the United States. Under Sharia law, a man, if he feels like his wife is being disrespectful or argumentative, has the right to beat her and to disown her and stop providing for her. She's considered property, basically, and of course that would not fly here in the United States. So anyway, a few other things about Sharia law. I'm really tired, by the way. So Sharia law is made up on two books, really, or two collections of works. The first one being the Quran, and the second being what's called the Hadith, Hadith, Hadith. And the Hadith are a collection of writings about Muhammad himself while he lived and walked on this earth. And the Hadith, the people who wrote the Hadith, the Muslim scholars and whatnot, knew Muhammad, or knew people who knew Muhammad, and told them, or they witnessed themselves, how he lived his life. So if Muhammad had 4 wives at any given time, then the average Muslim man can have 4 wives at any given time. If Muhammad married a 9-year-old girl, then it's permissible under Sharia law for a man to marry, another man to marry a child of 9 years of age. If Muhammad wielded the sword in jihad, and then it would be permissible potentially for someone to do that as well. So the Hadith is a collection of the life and times of Muhammad, and then the Quran is the holy book given to Muhammad, as he says, by the angel Gabriel. So if a judge wants to know how to handle something, he may look at the Hadith, he may look at the Quran. So it just depends on the circumstances. And within Sharia law, there are all kinds of rules. There's, probably hundreds, but the ones that come to mind are a Muslim man can have 4 wives. He is just responsible to take care of each of them. A Muslim man, it is considered blasphemy or make somebody an apostate if they leave Islam and convert to another religion, or just forsake Islam. That's a big no-no. It is technically punishable by death. That's part of the reason that a lot of young Muslims don't walk away from the faith, especially when they're still under their parents' authority, because it's super scary, because their parents could completely reject them. And even worse, they could kill them. There have been some what's called, I think they call them mercy killings, or no, honor killings in the United States, where immigrant families from Muslim countries move here, and then when their kids get involved in the public schools and get involved with other Americans, sometimes they decide Islam's not for them, and they become Christians or whatever. And there have been a couple of cases where fathers have taken it into their own hands to take the lives of their daughters rather than allow them to convert to another religion. It's that big of a deal. And so in one case in particular, there was a girl who she attended high school, and she told her friends that she was worried about what her dad's reaction would be if he found out she was a Christian. And of course he did find out, and so he drove to the school, I think it was at the school, and he intentionally hit her, struck her with his car to kill her, and did kill her in the parking lot of the school, I believe. And he felt he was completely justified in doing so based upon Sharia law. According to Sharia law, Muslims are not supposed to eat pork, engage in gambling or prostitution, listen to secular music, drink caffeine. Actually, not caffeine. I think it's just alcohol. They're not allowed to drink alcohol. And so there's a whole list of do's and don'ts. Of course, they have to pray 5 times a day. They have to wash themselves before they pray. There's just lots of little things like that. So a Muslim man is allowed to take women as sex slaves or concubines if they are engaged in warfare. So at conquered territory, a Muslim man would have the choice to take on women as his sex slaves or concubine, or wife if he so chose, and there's a big difference between them. The Quran or Sharia law does not outlaw slavery. There is still a lot of Arab Muslim slavery that exists today that is perfectly okay within Sharia. Let me think what else. Those are the main things. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. So you'll see a couple pictures there of women and people from Great Britain who are protesting wanting Sharia law to come to their country, which is just crazy. Okay, then we had several definitions following that. Islam, which means submission. Allah, which actually technically means the God instead of God. And I think that's because on the Arabian Peninsula there were a lot of a variety of multiple worships or multiple gods. The people were polytheistic. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And so the God indicates that Allah is the God amongst all of the gods. And so, let's see here. Imam is what you call the pastor or the preacher of a Muslim mosque. It means to lead or guide. In Sunni Islam, the imam generally leads the mosque, prayer service, etc. The imam in Fayetteville that I'm associated with, he actually is a full-time lawyer. That's what he got his degree in. And so he is an overseer of the mosque. He lets people in. He has a set of keys. He coordinates Sunday school classes. He leads the call to prayer. He probably would do some of the more ceremonial things if asked. And so he is the imam, but he has a full-time job. It just depends on where you're at. The next one is there's several pictures of women wearing a head covering, and those are called a hijab. It's a head covering worn in public by some Muslim women. And then, okay, then we jumped really quickly over to notes. Today was kind of fast-tracked. So I gave them some general information about Islam. Some of it is familiar, some of it isn't familiar, but I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. So there are 1.8 billion worldwide, Muslims worldwide today. It's the second largest growing religion in the world, largely because they have a lot of kids. And it's sort of a fearful religion as well. This number is way outdated. 1 to 2 million Muslims. I'm going to bet it's closer to 3 to 4 million with all of the crisis in the Middle East and in Syria and all the problems that have been happening. I feel like that probably there's a larger population. I mean, even just what happened in Afghanistan, thousands and thousands of Afghanis have come to the United States, and they are predominantly Muslim. There are at least 4 Muslim members of the House of Representatives. 2 women, 2 men, and there's probably more than that, but those are the 4 that last year when I did this PowerPoint, those were the 4 that existed. And as I said before, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. There is a map that shows the pockets of Muslim communities in the United States. They oftentimes correlate with large cities, but California, Florida, and New York have pretty significant Muslim populations. Let's see here, the history of Islam, and this is stuff that you'll know. The founder of Islam is Muhammad. He was born in 570, and around 610 is when he saw his vision. He was born in Mecca, and he was illiterate and had to tell scribes what the angel had said so they could write it down for him. The 2 holy books are the Quran and the Hadith. We go to the next one, and then there's a picture of a map that has in red all of the areas of the world that were occupied by a Muslim empire or so. The next slide, teachings of Islam. So these are general things that they believe. Muslims are monotheistic, which means they believe in one God only. They have that in common with Judaism and Christianity. However, Muslims believe that Christians are actually polytheistic because they believe in the Trinity. So they don't think that we are monotheistic. Islam teaches that in the Quran, it teaches that mankind was created to serve Allah and to avoid all forms of idolatry. So we're created to submit ourselves to God, and then in turn we are to reject all forms of idolatry, loving things other than Allah. And so when Muslims look at the Western culture and they see it through the eyes of Hollywood, they think that we all love money, love power, love all of those things. And so they have a kind of a bit of a disdain for us. Heaven is called paradise in Islam, and only faithful Muslims go there. And of course, as we've talked about before, they never know if they've been faithful enough until they die. They do have a place called hell. People who go to hell are people who reject Islam, reject Allah, and they encounter boiling water, pus, chains, wind, and food that chokes. That's how it's described in the Quran, I believe. And then finally, there is no eternal security for Muslims. They can never know for sure, and they may arrive at one point and be good enough and then fall backwards and lose that gift of paradise. And so it's a pretty sad religion, actually. A lot of religions are like that. I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to pick up on some more things that related to Islam later. I didn't get much farther in class because we stopped in we watched a short video about the story of Muhammad's night journey, and I would like you to watch that. It helps to explain why Muslims pray 5 times a day and where the origins of that came from. We've already talked about the Dome of the Rock. So in Muhammad's night dream or night journey, he leaves his bed in Mecca, travels to the Temple Mount, and ascends to heaven from there. And so I want you to watch that as well. And then the kids did their Dallas brochures and completed them the last 15 minutes of class or so. So both classes were shorter than normal, abbreviated, and that's why the lesson for 2 classes today is pretty short. So I'm going to upload this all to Google Classroom. Hopefully it will make sense and you will be able to track with us and jump back in when you're done. Okay? When I see you again. All right, bye.